Happy Sunday to you guys. We are sitting outside the laundromat right now waiting for the laundry to get done. And I put out a post this morning that seemed to get a pretty good response. So I just wanted to cover it from a little bit more of a personal standpoint than just writing a post. The post I wrote was mainly to people that are anti government and have quit following the medical standards and uh, the recommendations put out by big pharma, our doctors and stuff, big hospitals that are bought and paid for by rigorous training that doctors go to school with blinders on. They have to follow a specific regimen or else they don't get clients, they don't get the recommendations, they could possibly be sued and considered the black sheep of the family, stuff like that. Um, Whenever this virus came around, most of us in the community in general were saying no to sugar, no to carbs, no to fructose, no to highly processed foods and stuff like that. And we were trying to take our own health into our own hands. Everybody was posting on social media about anti government this and anti government that. And 1948, 1950 with Ansel Keys and saying stay away from the government, don't believe the government, don't believe in the statistics that they put out. We were saying a lot of stuff along the lines of, they're saying this causes cancer, that causes cancer, this causes this disease, and everybody was completely against it, completely and utterly against it. And it was something that was popping up on social media every single day. So it became the norm, to go on social media and see somebody post about a statistic that was put out by the World Health Organization or the American Diabetes Association. Even, I mean, for God's sake, even the new CEO, African American lady, seemed like a wonderful lady, came forward and said, you know what, the standards of the American Diabetes Association just doesn't work for me. I have to lower my carb threshold even more. I have to figure out individually what works for me because their recommendations are just too much for me. In general, we statistically talked about how the government recommendations were toxic for us. And most of us that have an education or do something with our life, are working, that they want to do something and be successful, we find that we seem to be thinking for ourselves more instead of having other people think for us. Before, it was apparent to me that people that wanted to be guided and told what to do were more of the type of people that followed the government standards and recommendations and believed wholeheartedly what kind of BS lies their doctor told them and stuff all the time, and thought the new vaccine or a new drug would fix their condition or their problem. But the people that were more educated, hardworking, seemed to want to do something for themselves, the grinders, the people of the world that really, really, really had an opinion about things and were going to make their reality what they wanted it to be by through good hard work, drive, and determination, and being honest with themselves about situations, would never succumb to the types of standards that the government would put out. But now that this virus has outspread everything, according to the World Health Organization and the CDC, people don't want to do that no more. People seem to not want to think for themselves anymore. People want to wholeheartedly go off what social media has to say and the news stations and stuff have to say, but yet we find CBS editing Italy's emergency room footage into a segment talking about a New York hospital and then being caught in the middle of it, and then Fox News reporting on a live emergency room situation where something's going on with a ventilator. Come to find out, it's just a simulation for doctors to practice using the ventilators. We find that doctors are coming forward and saying that it's okay for them to skew numbers and all these other things, and not every single person is diagnosed with COVID-19 appropriately. The tests don't even have a high percentage of accuracy, and then a lot of the ways that they test for it with what was it, like the RT-PCR test or something? I've got my numbers mixed up, I'm sure. The original creator of the test that they use said that this is not a tool to be used for diagnosis. This is only a tool to understand, to further the diagnosis. This is not to be used for diagnosis. And what do? They end up using the very tool that the creator of how they diagnose or how they use this to find out what the virus is, they use it for diagnosis. So a lot of the stuff doesn't make sense. In order for you to really break down this virus appropriately, you'd have to put it under a scope. You'd have to look and see what type of crown type virus it is, yada, yada, yada. There's much more that goes into it than that. And then you find Germany's statistics on them going back and looking at the studies and stuff. How many people actually were affected by it that led to a death rate? And it was like 0.4% instead of the 2% that we put out here. And then Italy goes back and they look at their statistics, and it's like almost up to 80% of the people that they diagnosed with COVID-19 later tested out to not have COVID-19. They died from cancer, heart-related issues, or whatever it may be. And then you look at the very people in the low-carb, keto, paleo community and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden they were anti-government before, anti-recommendations, anti-this, anti-that. I'll find my own food pyramid and stuff like that, something that's more bioavailable, nutrient-dense, and something that I'm actually going to adhere to that I know is good for my life. They're the very people now that are succumbing to the government recommendations and stuff and wholeheartedly believing in it. I mean, I'm on many keto carnivore groups, and you see people before that were so against government reciting the exact thing that the government's putting out, and it's almost like they're believing it. What happened? Why all of a sudden the two-faced stuff? Why all of a sudden the things change and all of a sudden everybody believes what the government's putting out? And if you speak against it wholeheartedly, you're a terrible person. And it looks like the people that were originally talking against the government with their nutrition, statistic data and stuff like that, diseases, cancer, all these other things, are now the ones that are the very sheep that are following the path to control, to lockdown, to quarantine, to doing exactly what they want them to do. It seems like the people that were against it completely before now willingly, sheepily follow. And it's sad because we have people, doctors coming forward daily telling them that we're not following this correctly, we're not doing this correctly. The ventilators are actually exacerbating people's conditions. If you have lungs that can't absorb oxygen and exchange carbon dioxide, you cannot take a ventilator and force oxygen into somebody's lungs if it's already full of fluid. It makes the condition worse. You need to give them supplemental oxygen to help them kind of slowly get that oxygen intake in, so you can give them oxygen that they may not be absorbing naturally via the attack of type 1 cell, type 2 cells. Type 2 cells get infected after type 1, and then blood pressure kind of gets out of control because the receptor actually helps regulate. I may not be explaining it 100%, but that's the gist of it. There are many videos where you can find that stuff out. Now, we talk about believing people in this community and stuff like that, that are low-carb doctors, and they're coming forward and they're talking against it. But I guess that's not enough now for the low-carb, keto, carnivore community, because I see a lot of people that were part of that community before. They were talking against the government. We don't want this. We don't want those food recommendations. The food pyramids are built by pharmaceutical companies, yada, yada, yada. Now they're the very ones reciting all the dogma and BS behind it. Guys, we turned away from that type of information before, and now all of a sudden we're completely for it. What happened? When this is all over, are you going to go back to anti-government again? How two-faced do you actually want to be? Because a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense. A lot of the keto doctors and stuff agreed that it doesn't make sense. But by you going against the very thing that you stood for before, and then all of a sudden turning an eye to somebody like Fauci that is one of the biggest crooks, or the WHO director is tied to so many different criminal activities in other countries. I mean, what was it, 2014, 2016, whenever they were trying to first study the coronavirus, and there was a moratorium put out on it where they said they didn't want to do that because it seemed like it was too dangerous, having to escalate or create a bigger virus than what was already there to study it. And Fauci went against that and pumped money into all this. Then they had to sublet the studying stuff out to China. I mean, there's a reason for all that. But we're going to believe the statistics that they put out. We're going to believe the statistics that the World Health Organization puts out, when these are some of the biggest criminals in the entire world. People don't follow that stuff. People don't pay attention to that. They want to believe what's on the media. They want to believe what's coming from these doctors, but they don't want to do the homework to actually figure out where these doctors came from and what they've been involved in. I pray that you guys heal. I pray that you find some kind of comfort in knowing that there are people out there that are still doing the right thing. They're still sanitizing their hands, they're still washing their hands, they're still doing whatever they can do to protect other people just in case it's bigger than what they actually think it is. But at the end of the day, when you give government so much control and you continually allow them to tell you to stay in your home, don't go outside, don't do these things, don't act upon the rights that you have, they'll continue to do it. And that's why you find a lot of protests in different states now. That's why you find a lot of the governors are starting to open up the states, the beaches and stuff now, because they know it's just not feasible. You can't keep people away from work not making money and then affect their livelihood. They can't pay their bills. This $1,200 a month shit is nothing. It's not going to do nothing. It's not going to pay anything. It's going to get you by. What about all the other stuff that has to get paid for? The gas. Children need stuff. Something breaks. You got to buy that. $1,200 is just going to barely pay your rent. It's not going to pay your bills and all the other supplemental things that go along with it. And then you have the mortgage companies on top of that wanting their payment. It doesn't make any damn sense because now the mortgage company, there's nothing to put in play for this. The mortgage company should take the people's mortgage payments until this is over and move it to the back of the loan. Extend it out. Don't charge them higher rates. Don't come after their home and stuff like that. But the government doesn't get involved with any of that. There's nothing put in play for that stuff. So while all this is going on, and people think they got it all figured out, you got the people that don't want to work sitting at home wanting to collect that $1,200 check, that $2,000 check, whatever. They want to do that. The majority of us out here want to be back at work making money so we can actually have some kind of decent livelihood, put money away and stuff like that, and be able to provide for our family. But when you start looking at the housing industry in general, they don't take into consideration any of that stuff. There's nobody so far that's come forward and said, look, if we're going to extend this another month, 2 months, 3 months, let's make it mandatory where all banks, all mortgage companies have to take the payments for people's homes. They don't owe nothing right now. No credit card payments, no medical bill payments, no mortgage payments, no none of that. All that gets moved to the back of the loan completely. It's just going to extend it out. Instead of it being 5 years, 3 months, maybe we'll make it 5 years, 6 months. So that way those 3 months that they missed because of what was going on can get moved to the back and people can take that money and focus on paying for their bills and stuff like that until we get this all straightened out. But none of that shit's going on. You know, we're focused on this $1,200 a month thing right now, and people think that that's sufficient enough. Some of us have homes. Some of us have multiple vehicles and insurances and all this other stuff we have to pay for. And I pay $300 a month in tool allowance. All this stuff has to get paid for in order for me to do my job. I'm essential. But what is $1,200 going to do? You know, the first 2 weeks of this whole thing, I turned 15 hours at work. That was like $400 for 2 weeks. That's way, way, way. I mean, that's not even 25% of what I would make in a 2-week period. That cut me down bad. So when you're used to living in a certain amount of means, when you're used to living in a certain amount of means and you get taken away from that, $1,200 can help pay your bills and get you by and stuff like that. But it's not going to help with your mortgage payment, your rent. I mean, we need to start thinking about all this stuff. There's a big issue here. And a lot of people are walking away from this whole quarantine thing, staying at home thing, social distancing thing. And you can see them more out in public. My hours have more than doubled in the last 2 weeks because people are getting tired of staying home. They're actually out. They're taking their vehicles to the dealership. They're doing more shopping and stuff like that. They're saying, to hell with this. Screw it. I have stuff I have to do. I have a family I have to take care of. And I got to be able to provide and live my life. And that's what people are going back to doing. So regardless if, you know, the governor, the mayor, whatever of Illinois says you need to stay inside, people are simply, they're out and about doing more and more stuff now because they just know it's not going to work. So they're going against the recommendations. What was it, Texas, Galveston or something like that? They're already starting to open stuff. Florida, they're already starting to open stuff. I mean, it's to the point now where people need to wake up and realize, what is it? Is it your livelihood and how you have to provide? Or is it staying at home because the government told you to, where the statistics of death and infected don't even match what's that of the flu? It's kind of like one of those things where you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You know, if I do something the wrong way, if I breathe something the wrong way, if I get sick and then I take it to work and I get somebody else sick and then they get somebody else sick, maybe somebody dies, right? Well, that's any year. That's with any virus. That's with any sickness that could happen. And people that have poor immune health, poor respiratory condition and stuff in general, I'm sorry for them, but that's part of life. That's what happens. Can we minimize it? Yes, we can be cleaner people. We can wash our ass and our hands and all this other stuff. But a lot of us can go back to work that have the antibodies build up to this, that are not affected by this. We're some kind of testing to put in place so we can go back to work. Those of us that can help provide for the community and stuff like that, to pay taxes, to actually start building up revenue and stuff like that and pumping it back into society because we're willing to do that. We're willing to go back to work and do that stuff and take a chance because we're the ones that are not affected. We're the ones that can fight it. So it's kind of one of those things now where why is that not put in place? Those of us that can handle this virus, that can fight this virus, that don't have these medical conditions, should be able to go back to work so we can start providing for the community because the government's not going to do that. You know, there's nothing put into play for all that stuff. So the people before that used to be completely anti-government are the ones now that are looking completely two-faced because they're the ones that are believing the statistics that are put out. They're the ones that are Dr. Fauci this and the WHO that. But before they were just saying, "Oh, American diabetes is they're not for me. They don't look out for me. The WHO doesn't look out for me. The government doesn't care about me. My doctor doesn't care about me." But now every one of you are on the coattail of the CDC and the WHO and following every little snarling thing that they can actually throw at you, pumping it all over social media when just 3 or 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, you were saying the exact opposite. Doesn't make sense to me. Guys, we're in this together, and we need to make it through this. But at the same time, be sensible in the process of doing it. I have rights, and I have freedoms that I want to be able to execute and be able to carry out every single day. And I cannot do that if I have a governor and a mayor that's telling me I need to stay home, I can't do this, I can't do that. They're shutting down certain non-essential items. If I want to go to the store and buy light fixtures or something for my house or a new couch or something like that, you can't do none of that stuff right now. There's certain states that have shut down that stuff. If it's not food, you're not buying it. And that stuff's not right to me. You can't even live your life freely right now because of some pandemic. And notice I said pandemic. There's a reason for that. It's kind of to the point now where people need to wake up and realize exactly what's going on. There's so many doctors, there's so many medical professionals out there that actually believe wholeheartedly this is a lab manipulated virus. This is not something that occurs in the wild. It's got like a malaria blend to it, an HIV blend to it, a coronavirus blend to it, and they're saying that you can't get all three of these properties from something naturally occurring in a fish market. So when you wake up and you look at the bigger part of what's going on right now, okay, we get it. A lot of people died. We got to do what we can to minimize that from continuing. We got to be safe about it. But let us go back to work. Let us go back to making money and stuff like that. Let us go back to providing. I mean, even if it's just a little bit, it could be done. I mean, it's don't follow like sheep, guys. Wake up. Those of you that before, this message was really for you. You were so anti-government before, but now you're all over it. You're all for the government now, which is pretty sad. It's pretty sad. All right, guys. That's my message for today. Be blessed. Take care.